So I would love to stand up here today and tell you that after 3 years of board chair, my last time you're going to hear me at breakfast for a very long time, that we've figured it out. But the problem we face here in the Bay Area is a lot bigger than we imagined 3 years ago. Today we're going to talk about the heroes in the fight that we are engaged in, but we at Tipping Point are not superheroes. This problem is hard, it's complicated, and we've just now figured out, we don't have the answers, but we've figured out some of the questions. So right here in our community, we have 1.3 million people who cannot meet their basic needs, who are at the poverty line. So over the past year as an organization, and we talked a little bit about this last year, we've reorganized ourselves. We've tried to refocus on our commitment to the programmatic side as our leadership council. Our board has never, ever been more engaged. Weekly, we have these calls that go through the minutia, the details, and the hardworking staff have brought to us to make sure that we make some serious strides in our effort. We are hoping to break ground on our first prototype, roughly 150 unit low-cost housing, supportive housing project in the next 6 months. You're going to hear more about that quickly, or soon rather. But last year as an organization, we raised $95 million. If you would have told me 3 years ago that we were going to raise $95 million, I would have been absolutely ecstatic. However, the scale of this problem is a lot bigger than $95 million. We have a public sector that has not been effective. So what we have to do is we have to prove what works, we have to lobby, we have to push policy, we have to move mountains in order to make great strides. But this is what we're focused on as an organization. So this morning I would like to ask first all of our grantees in the room to please stand up. I would also like the staff of Tipping Point. Can all the staff at Tipping Point please stand up? So I want to thank every one of you for your commitment to this cause. This is the hardest place in the country to do this work. Like every one of these issues that we face, we all face together. And I want to thank you very much because it's hard. It's expensive, it's a tough fight, and the issues that we face in dealing with the public sector are challenging. And you guys every day tough it out. So now our first honoree. So as we were unfortunately reminded of by the campfires just a few weeks ago, we are a community. And we last year were hit by the North Bay fires that displaced an enormous amount of people, 6,000 homes, 9,000 jobs. And the community, and this community is so powerful, this community turned to Tipping Point and said, you have to do something here. So we put on our concerts. We raised $34 million over the course of a few weeks. We mobilized this entire community. It was amazing. With this Tipping Point Emergency Relief Fund. So as of September, all of the money has gone out the door. And like this is the amazing thing about the organization, but it's also the challenge. Every year, all our money goes out the door. And while it feels like $34 million, like this is like size and scale which we haven't seen in the Bay Area before, but it's still a fight every day up there. The group that we want to honor from this morning is the Legal Aid of Sonoma County. So Legal Aid of Sonoma County was immediately on site at Santa Rosa's Local Assistance Center. They jumped into action. They provided emergency and legal services to the community. And since the fire, they've supported over 1,000 people to recoup and help them recoup losses. So for this incredible advocacy and dedication in the wake of the 2017 North Bay fires, it's my honor to introduce the Tipping Point Award to Legal Aid of Sonoma County and Disaster Relief Attorney Kendall Jarvis.
Thank you, Chris. When the fires broke out across Northern California last year, I was waiting to find out if I'd pass the bar. I got a call from Ronit Rubinoff, Executive Director of Legal Aid of Sonoma County, where I'd interned during law school. "This is far beyond anything we've seen before," Ronit said. "We need your help right away." I agreed to come on board. I coordinated outreach and took calls around the clock. In those first few weeks, I talked to over 500 people displaced by the disaster. Fire doesn't discriminate between rich and poor, but it is the most vulnerable who face the greatest barriers in its aftermath. Almost every matter we came across required legal expertise. A month in, when I found out I was bar certified, I knew I had my work cut out for me. It was Journey's End, a mobile home park where the Tubbs fire burned 3/4 of the property, destroyed the power grid, and claimed 3 lives. That felt most urgent. Journey's End had been family-owned for 60 years, and before the fires, rents there were the most affordable in the county. Survivors were all low income, elderly, or disabled. It didn't take much digging to uncover major problems. Families who lost their homes at Journey's End qualified for FEMA-funded hotel vouchers, but after just 6 weeks, FEMA pulled the benefit without warning or explanation. Of the 161 mobile homes originally in the park, only 44 remained. FEMA told people, "Your house is fine, it's still standing." But due to smoke damage and lack of utilities, they were uninhabitable. Insurance companies denied claims, banking on residents' inability to fight back. The most people won were small payouts to fix cracks or repaint. Every single resident was on the verge of homelessness. We patched together short-term solutions, a private donation here, a church basement there, until last February when park owners entered discussions with nonprofit developer Burbank Housing. Burbank was preparing to clear the land and redevelop, granting first access to survivors from the park. But I knew that residents wouldn't be able to afford any increase in rent, and that depending on the timeline, the oldest might not live long enough to see the end result. I researched mobile home park closures and jotted down the list of protections under California state law. "Look, I get it," I said to Burbank. It's a gray area. The park wasn't fully destroyed, but these people lost everything. If you're going to close Journey's End and build, they're entitled to support. They agreed to partner with me. I wrote appeals to FEMA and secured as much temporary housing as I could. Battles with insurance companies are ongoing, but with these resources combined, I'm hopeful we can provide a future for the people of Journey's End. Bigger picture challenges remain. When the fires hit, at least 70% of renters and homeowners were underinsured, many severely. FEMA wasn't built for wildfires. Unlike a hurricane or a tropical storm, there's no infrastructure left to repair or assess. The debris removal process alone took 10 months. Now there's fear FEMA won't issue an extension, cutting off rental assistance, and taking away the trailers at the fairgrounds, where over 100 people still live. There are dozens of other land use, contract, and employment matters we expect to play out over the next 5 to 10 years. We will be in this for another decade, if not more. As the tragic Camp and Woolsey fires have proven over the past month, these disasters should no longer come as a surprise. We're working alongside state policymakers to better regulate the insurance industry and shield people from this kind of devastation in the future. This October, on the anniversary of the fires, there were events all over the community. The vigil at Journey's End was the last of 3 I attended that day. I arrived to find rows of white chairs set across the black ground. There was a small table with pictures of those who had passed away and electric candles flickering in the dark. People shared memories and reflected on the year. As things were winding down, the man who organized the vigil stood and said, "We want to recognize Legal Aid of Sonoma County. Thank you for being there for us. Thank you for paying attention." As a lawyer, you don't often get moments like this. I certainly don't do this work for the acknowledgement, but his words meant everything to me. Law school teaches you a lot about fact. You look at case law or statutory law and say, this is what happened, so this is what follows, black, white. But with a disaster, particularly one of this size and scale, there is no blueprint, there is no precedent. In the middle of it all, Tipping Point came forward with the funds needed to sustain my position. We were able to stop worrying about where resources would come from and focus on doing our best work. It was also Tipping Point who recognized the degree of need at Journey's End and channeled funds to Burbank Housing. You've done more than anyone else to give survivors there a fighting chance at recovery. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to one of my clients, Sean Place. I met with Sean for several weeks last spring to work on his FEMA application. When his $6,000 benefit check finally came through, Sean showed up at our offices wanting to pay his bill. "There is no bill," Lisa, our case manager, told him. "Our services are provided free of charge." Lisa said that Sean started to tear up. He made a $100 donation to Legal Aid on the spot, and here he is.
I was born here in San Francisco, but I've lived in Sonoma County all my life. When I was a boy, there was no fences in Rona Park. You could walk out the back door and all the way downtown. When the streetlights came on, it was time to go home for dinner. My mom always set an extra place just in case someone else needed to eat. My parents met at a USO dance. Dad was in the Navy and Mom was a nurse. My siblings and I all went to the same school, St. Eugene's until 8th grade, and St. Vincent's for high school. In college, when me and my girlfriend found out we got pregnant, we got married. I dropped out, got a sales job at Macy's, and worked in materials management at Sutter Health for 14 years. We tried hard, but the relationship didn't work. After the divorce, a friend reached out. I was doing maintenance and landscaping at Safari West, a wildlife reserve in Santa Rosa. Her family owned a guest ranch nearby. "Move here," she said. "There's plenty of space and it's close to your work." So I rented a cabin on her property for $1,100 a month and $50 for utilities. The ranch became my home. After work, I helped with the animals, did small repairs. I got to know the people who came from all over the world to staff the place for the summer. My ranch nickname was True. The night of the fire, I had my 2 kids there with me. Ashley's 19 and Ethan's 15. By the time the winds picked up, I had already gone to bed. Ashley came to my room about 11 p.m. Dad, something's wrong," she said. The smoke was thick and black. You couldn't see 10 feet. "Get your stuff, get in the car," I told the kids. Our dog Ernest was My dog was too anxious to get in the car. I woke up 4 staff. I thought about going to corral the horses, but it kept on getting hotter and harder to breathe. About 11:30, we pulled onto the freeway. We saw all their cars with fire on their windshield wipers and tires. I drove to my parents' house and unloaded the kids. I turned back to get the dog. By the time I got there, the police had barricaded the ranch road. 2 horses died on the ranch that night. Ernest didn't make it. The barn, the main house, 2 single-wide trailers burned to the ground. All I had left was what I was wearing, a pair of pajamas and my tennis shoes. After the fire, every day felt like a month. On Wednesday, I went down to the local assistance center to fill out payment paperwork. I helped beat back the fires that were still burning around Safari West, and I got a second job shipping and receiving. When I started to hear about the assistance coming in, I went to check on my status. We haven't been able to verify your address, FEMA said. Do you have any documentation? My lease agreement had burned in the fire. All I had was an old propane bill in the glove box. So I gave them my landlord's phone number and sat down to wait. Your landlord won't confirm your occupancy, they said. I was confused. She didn't answer when I called, so I tried another guy from the ranch. He said they'd been renting to several of us under the table and didn't want to get caught. I had no idea. There's been a lot of fraudulent claims, the FEMA rep said. I was too upset to respond. Months went by with no progress. I requested old Comcast bills, got a statement from Ethan's school. Okay, we believe you live there, FEMA said, but you don't have any losses. And then, even if you do have losses, you waited too long to file. I was about to give up when someone from Catholic Charities referred me to legal aid. I met with Kendall. She told me to write a letter describing my situation. I believe you, she said when I showed it to her. She helped me put my facts in order. She removed the emotion from the page. We sent the letter and things started moving. FEMA sent an agent out to inspect the property. When the $6,000 came through, I couldn't believe it. I felt like I wasn't drowning. I used the money for first and last month's rent and a security deposit. It freed up my income for things like sheets, towels, and new shoes for the kids. I bought Ethan a couple video games, and I bought Ashley a French book and some knitting supplies. It didn't feel so tight to go to the grocery store anymore. For a long time after the fire, I couldn't sleep. You play Monday night quarterback in your head. Could I have done this? Could I have done that? Could I have cut this way? Gone that way? When the police said no, should I have just blown straight through? I think about Ashley's list of losses, her stuffed animals, and the baby clothes of Ethan she was saving just in case he had kids. I think about how much Ethan still blames me for the dog. By the time I got to legal aid, I didn't have much. I had lost everything. I was questioning myself. I didn't have the presence of mind to be objective. What they did for me, helping me with that letter, it might not seem like so much, but to me it was huge. Thanks. Thank you. But to me it was huge. It gave me back my dignity. It saved me. I owe legal aid to Sonoma County and all of you an enormous debt of appreciation. There are no words to express how grateful I am to you. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nadir Shaikh, and I'm a proud member of Tipping Point's Leadership Council. I'm a partner at Catalyst Partners, a small boutique investment bank here in San Francisco, a city I've been proud to call home for the past 21 years. It's my honor to be introducing Compass Family Services. The vast majority of families facing a housing crisis in San Francisco are served by Compass. One of the oldest social services organizations in the city, Compass provides temporary shelter, longer-term housing, counseling, childcare, case management, and much, much more. My wife Sobi and I were first introduced to Compass by our friends Todd and Katie around 9 years ago, and our first experience with the organization was through its Adopt a Family program. We wanted to do this as a family, so we made our kids do it with us. Off we went to Target with the Adopt a Family wish list, and in what seemed like no time at all, managed to acquire virtually all the items on the list. When we got to the checkout register and paid for everything, the entire bill totaled little more than what we would have paid for a very nice meal in San Francisco. It turned a light bulb on for our kids. They gained a clearer understanding of how lucky we are to live the life we do, and realized that other families aren't as fortunate. More importantly, they learned that we can and we should do something to take better care of those families in the San Francisco community who aren't as privileged as we are. Since that first year, there's no more making them do it. Now the kids ask us, when are we doing Adopt a Family? Where are the lists? And if this program, by the way, shameless plug, sounds appealing to any of you, Compass still needs help with this year's Adopt a Family. So after we're done, find somebody and sign up for it, please. It's estimated 2,500 children in San Francisco will be homeless tonight. 2,500. These kids are 5 times more likely to become homeless as adults. And they're nearly twice as likely to drop out of school as kids with homes. Compass interrupts that trajectory. They work alongside families, accompanying it, they call it, to achieve housing stability, economic self-sufficiency, and well-being. More than 90% of families that find housing through Compass are still housed and stable 12 months after exiting a Compass program. You will meet one of those families this morning. Now, I know a lot of you have been to this breakfast before, and you've heard a lot of stories, but you may not have heard from someone who has overcome chronic homelessness. It takes a tremendous amount of healing, recovery, and courage to get up here and share those stories. Today, we're honored to have a couple who's willing to do just that, to share their story of how Compass supported them on their journey out of homelessness and into a better life. What their story tells me is that what Compass is doing is working. What Tipping Point is doing is working. Now, certainly there's no silver bullet. The issues that result in homelessness are often generations deep, but the solutions are there. And each of us has to do our part and be in it for the long haul. But before you meet this amazing family, I would like to introduce you to the equally amazing Erica Kisch, Compass's executive director. Having been around Compass quite a bit now, I believe much of the organization's community feeling, and obviously its success, can be attributed to Erica. So, for providing families with stability, hope, and of course a home, it is my pleasure to bring to the stage Erica Kisch of Compass Family Services.
You all know I have a prepared speech, but before I started, I just have to say how strongly my heart goes out to Sean and his family and all of the fire victims. Thank you, Nadir. I've been at this work for a long time. My first job out of college was in a family shelter, but I've always been a social worker, even as a little kid. If there was a child that was struggling or a child that was getting bullied, 8 or 10-year-old me would be there to take them under my wing. When I first moved to San Francisco and visited the Tenderloin, I saw a neighborhood with so much life and so much potential, but also so much suffering. I knew right then and there that this was where I wanted to spend the next chapter of my working life. I joined Compass 24 years ago to run our shelter program for homeless families, and I have never left. The families we serve face incredible obstacles. Most are headed by single parents, mainly women. 90% of those mothers report having been sexually or physically abused, and 88% say that domestic violence contributed significantly to their becoming homeless. They need to leave, but they can't afford a place to stay. This is who is at our doors. Homelessness was really different back when I first started at Compass. There were fewer families in need because the cost of housing wasn't nearly as out of reach as it is today. To give you an idea as to how much shorter the shelter wait list was, we used to track it on a whiteboard. And it was a given, at the very least, we could help a family to find a studio apartment somewhere in the city. Compass's infrastructure used to be really lean, and I helped to make it even leaner. If I could do something myself, I did, and I promoted this culture within my team. We were a bunch of misers working ourselves to death. But we wanted to spend every penny we could on direct services to our client families. Then, in 2007, Tipping Point came on board as a funder. They helped us to understand that being too lean was actually detrimental. We were eating away at the bone and the muscle of the organization. They also funded new positions to help us to build our infrastructure. We took a big step this year. Several of our leases were coming up, and instead of continuing to rent, we purchased a building, a block from City Hall, to serve as our new headquarters and service hub for homeless families. This move has changed everything. It has allowed us to escape San Francisco's impossible commercial rental market and will provide us with real stability into the future, ensuring that we can continue to focus on the task at hand, ending family homelessness. Tipping Point was there to consult on our strategy and is helping with the Building's Capital campaign. Over the years, Tipping Point has also helped Compass to become a data-driven organization. Yes, we did finally get rid of that whiteboard. They funded an integrated database to better track our client outcomes. We now have a better understanding of what it takes to house and keep a family housed for the long run. This has attracted new funders and led to a more effective partnership with the city. Compass has always been about housing families, but we know it's important to address all of the issues that led to a family's housing crisis, whether it's trauma, the need for affordable childcare, lack of education and job skills, or legal problems. Every year we provide wraparound services to more than 5,000 homeless and at-risk parents and children, 90% of whom are below the federal poverty line. Today, you're going to meet one of our amazing families. Heather Brown and Travis Perot lived at Compass Clara House, our supportive transitional housing program. In this program, each family works closely with their case manager to develop a long-term action plan to achieve their goals, whether it's parenting, going to school, getting a job, and housing. Heather and Travis exemplify what's true for all of our families. Anything is possible with the right support. Please help me to welcome them.
Good morning, everyone. Travis and I grew up in Redwood City. We went to the same middle school and the same high school. Back then, we were just friends, but I had a huge crush on him.
She asked me out a bunch of times.
He said no a bunch of times. He told me I was too much to handle, which was definitely true, in more ways than one. I had traumas from my childhood. When I was around 9 or 10, my sister and I, by court order, were put into the care of my grandparents. We were there because a neighbor sexually abused us. I was then diagnosed with severe PTSD and anxiety. I was around 12 when I started using heavy drugs every day.
My life went downhill when I was 18. My mom left my dad. She moved out. I moved into a trailer park with my father and started using heroin every day.
Travis and I both struggled in our teens and early 20s. He worked various jobs, and I finished college, but we were both still heavily addicted. We were living with my grandfather when he died of cancer. We were evicted. We found ourselves unexpectedly homeless. We ended up living in Golden Gate Park and on Door Alley, an intent row right off Division. We were ticketed, but we couldn't pay them. They turned into warrants. We did whatever work that we could, and we were always applying for jobs. But it's really hard to look nice for an interview when you're living on the streets.
We had a miscarriage, and we both went downhill from there.
It was a wake-up call losing the baby. We knew we couldn't grow a family in a tent. I knew that I was doing something wrong. I knew that something had to change. It's not like I was out on the streets and I didn't want sobriety. I wanted sobriety. I just couldn't do it. My anxiety and my fear from my childhood were so bad at this point, I couldn't function on my own. I relied on Travis. To separate the two of us would send me into a tailspin. I would get stuck where I was. Travis took such good care of me out on the streets. He would make pillows by blowing up 2 surgical gloves and tying the fingers together so I didn't have to lay my head on the streets at night.
One time when we were living on the beach, I made an oven out of rocks and cooked us a lasagna. And then I put the hot rocks in the sand and built our bed over the top of it to keep us warm at night.
There were no shelters or treatment options that we could go to as a couple. Staying on the streets was easier. 2 years ago, when we found out that we were pregnant again, we knew we had some big decisions to make. With the warrants that I had, I would go straight to jail after giving birth to my son, and my baby would go straight to foster care. We didn't want that, so we tried to go to jail and do our time before the baby came.
We set up our tent on the beach for 3.5 days with the hopes of getting arrested. When the park rangers came, they said, "Did you just want to give you a ticket?" She said, "Hell no."
I actually asked them to take me to jail. We had gotten clean those few days on the beach, but we needed help staying that way. I stayed in jail until all my warrants were cleared off, and I left on probation.
I did 59 days in jail. I got out a week before she did. I told her when we got together, I wouldn't be the guy that you're waiting for in jail. I promised her that when we got together.
He was really proud of that. We were at the day-to-day shelter when my water broke. We took 2 buses and carried all of our belongings to the labor and delivery room at San Francisco General. We named our son Kingston. It means to be born the son of a king, to have royal blood, and to me, it was the perfect name for him. We were at the hospital when the Compass case manager called us and said they had a place for us.
We moved in the day before Thanksgiving. It was such a relief to finally have a place for my son to sleep.
It was at Compass Clare House when we actually started to become a family, to become parents, and live our lives. I had spent so much time in a tent, I didn't know how to function in a house. My caseworker taught me how to cook, how to clean, and how to nurture Kingston. I learned how to plan my day, how to get places on my own. And now, when Travis is at work and I need him, I make a list on my whiteboard of all the things that I want to tell him, and I show it to him at the end of every day.
I'm working for Rec and Park Department as an assistant gardener. I'm trying to get into the Gardener's Apprentice program. I'm going to wait till I'm off probation to apply, because my boss recommended that you only get one first impression. So I'm going to City College, taking gardening classes to show how invested I am in the job.
Compass Clare House also gave us the opportunity to work on our legal problems. I'm actually proud to say I'm off probation now.
A year early, too. When it was time to move from Compass Clare House, we found out where we were going to move. It was like Door Street, the same street we used to sleep on, same street we used to have our tent on when we were homeless.
Now living on the 2nd floor, off the streets, in a safe building, feels like a million miles away from living in a tent. If you would have told me then that in just 2 years I would be clean and sober, off probation, signed up for college, financially stable, and raising a beautiful, smart, well-rounded son with Travis, my middle school and high school crush, I would have never believed you. When we got the opportunity to move from Compass Clare House, I was scared. So we still go to all the functions. We still stop by just to say hi. It's our love for Compass and for the community that we wanted to share our story. We wanted to give back. When you're doing the right thing and you're living life right, you want to welcome people into it. This is our way of saying thank you for showing what Compass meant to us and continues to mean to us as we move forward in our journey as a family. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kate Harbin Clammer, Managing Director of Source Capital and a Tipping Point board member. I've been working in private equity for almost 20 years, investing in companies and helping them to improve and scale. Throughout my career, I've always put relationships first. It's easy for CEOs of companies we invest in to come to us when things are great. But it is essential that they come to us when things are going wrong and they're struggling. That same commitment to partnership is what I love about Tipping Point. We ask our grantees, what isn't going well? What can we help with? We aren't afraid to ask the hard questions and to hear about their challenges. Last year, I stepped into the role of chair of Tipping Point's Education Committee. We know education is a proven tool for breaking the cycle of poverty, but we started asking, how can we be a more effective funder within the field? We've focused on two key areas: quality K-12 schools and college completion. Today in the U.S., just 1 in 5 students from low-income communities who enroll in college will graduate. The odds are stacked against them from the start. But College Track, a Tipping Point grantee since 2013, is committed to changing this reality. College Track is national, but started here in the Bay Area. It has centers in East Palo Alto, Oakland, and San Francisco. The program supports students from the moment they start high school until their college graduation day. It focuses on academic success, financial stability, work experience, and community service. And it works. College Track students graduate at 2.5 times the average for their low-income first-generation peers. A 4-year degree is the biggest predictor of life success and a stepping stone towards financial stability. In our country today, a college graduate is more than twice as likely to be employed than someone with just a high school diploma. Using the power of a degree, College Track propels our next generation into better futures. This work is more important now than ever. CEO Elissa Salas has been leading the organization for 4 years. She has experience across the spectrum as a high school teacher, a principal, and a district policy maker. For bringing equity to education and empowering students to change the trajectory of their lives, it's my pleasure to recognize College Track and its fearless CEO, Elissa Salas.
Thanks, Kate, for that warm introduction, and good morning to all of you. It's so good to be here to celebrate the impact that the Tipping Point community has had on our organization. When we recruit 9th graders at College Track, we tell them, if college is what you want, we know the formula. We'll take anyone who's ready to work hard. Then we ask them to commit the next 10 years of their young lives to us. At 13 or 14, that's almost half their life. For young people from communities where college doesn't come first, or where it's never been an option, this is a radical request. I remember being that age. I was in 8th grade when my dad and grandfather both very active in the Chicano movement, took me to my first demonstration. We marched against the historic Prop 187, a measure that would deny public services to undocumented Californians, including public education. And while my family was lucky enough to come to this country from Mexico with papers, I learned early that this world is not always equitable. My parents are first-generation high school graduates, and I'm one of 25 first cousins. We read like census statistics. Only 6 of 10 boy cousins have high school diplomas. My older brother, at age 42, just earned his GED, and my little sister, an Army veteran, 8 years after her tour in Afghanistan, is still navigating community college. But I refuse to believe that we are just products of a system living what the data predicts about our futures. Activism taught me that knowledge is power, and I knew from a very early age that an education was my path to a different outcome. When I applied for college, there was no formula. No campus tours, no SAT prep, no reach list. I ended up enrolling at the University of Laverne, a small liberal arts college 5 miles from where I grew up. Out of necessity, I latched on to whatever support I could find. I joined the debate team, campus ministry where I enhanced my faith, and I rushed the sorority with the highest GPA, thinking, they must know how to get through college. And 4 years later, I became the first in my extended family to graduate from college. At college, the young people we serve are now representative of the majority of students in this country. Today, half of all public school students receive free or reduced lunch. The majority are students of color, and 50% of those on college campuses are first in their family to go. It's our job to make sure that they are fully prepared to graduate because our future depends on it. In high school, College Track helps students identify their talents and interests, find the colleges that are the best fit for them, and apply for financial aid. We straddle both the K-12 and the higher ed pipeline. We see students who are receiving A's and B's in algebra and then having to take remedial math once they get to college. Our longevity allows us to see the gaps between both systems and offer critical support and intervention. And now that we have nearly 500 college alumni, we can track data like post-college salaries and career trajectories. And we know that 5 years out, our students' earnings are on par with all college graduates across the country. And we're building more internship and networking opportunities to close that gap sooner. When I joined College Track, it was in a period of rapid expansion. I had just opened our first center in Colorado, and the organization had a vision to nearly double our centers nationally and scale from a staff of 35 to over 100. Tipping Point came into the picture around that time. I remember them telling us, "You might be growing too fast, maybe some infrastructure." It was true. It sounds ridiculous now, but we didn't have a back office, an HR department, or even a finance team. Their honesty was an invitation to be vulnerable. Tipping Point connected us with McKinsey to develop our regional operations strategy, and with FMA to shore up our finances. We developed a compensation philosophy based on a Tipping Point study that would help us attract and retain top talent in a competitive Bay Area market. Once we had the right structures in place, we could figure out how to scale well. Last year, Kevin Durant, yes, of the Golden State Warriors, came to visit our Oakland site. The kids were starstruck. They couldn't stop talking about it for weeks. But he was just as impressed with them. He spoke about how his success is really just luck, genetics combined with hard work. He's 6'11" with a 7.5-foot wingspan. And though Kevin didn't graduate from college, he knows that for kids from his neighborhood and neighborhoods like it, a college degree is how you make your own luck. Soon after that visit, he announced a 10-year, $10 million commitment to bring College Track to his hometown in the DC region. And that center will begin serving students next month. Without Tipping Point, we wouldn't have the ability to capitalize on Kevin's interest the way that we did. At this point, there's no corner of our organization that Tipping Point hasn't touched. The value of a bachelor's degree has been hotly debated, but the benefits to both the student and their communities are indisputable. Our alumni have greater choice around where they live and where they work. They are more likely to vote, and their children are 5 times more likely to earn a bachelor's degree. For me, a degree was the currency I used to make a different life. There simply is no tool more transformative. But don't just take it from me. Hearing from our alumni is the most powerful way to witness this transformation. So it's an honor to introduce you to a College Track Oakland class of 2016 alum, Chang Liang.
Good morning, everyone. I said good morning, everyone. The other day, I overheard my parents talk about me to their friends. We're so proud of him, they said. But it wasn't always like this. I grew up on a small farm in Guangzhou, China. My parents gave up everything, their family, their friends, because they wanted a different life for me. When I was 7, we came to America. We landed at SFO carrying, those red, white, and blue nylon bags full of our belongings. At first, we lived at my aunt's family in East Oakland. There were 8 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. I remember staying up late at night with my mom, using a dictionary to translate my picture book assignments word for word. Man, only we had Google Translate back then. My parents worked multiple jobs, both in restaurants and factories. Once my sister was born, they saved up every single penny they had to buy our own home in West Oakland. The walls of our house would often shake by the police sirens, cars driving by with loud bass systems, and gunshots. In middle school, we were asked what we wanted to be when we grow up. I dreamed of becoming an inventor, but my teacher crushed it. She told me people don't really do that anymore without much explanation, and I was devastated. Over time, I started skipping class and hanging out with kids who were in a gang. I wanted to fit in, and they helped me feel safe. In 7th grade, I was arrested for fighting. When my parents came to bail me out, I was certain they would yell at me, but the entire ride home was dead silent. I could just see and sense the disappointment in their face. I was determined to change. A year later, College Track came to my middle school. They stood in front of my class and said that if we were committed, they would help us get to and through college. Yeah, I signed up. At that point, though, my GPA was below a 2.0. My English teacher had told me I would not get into a top college. But when my College Track mentor found out about my grades, she said, "Chang, we know you're smarter than this." It was the first time when someone pushed me to do more. I started going to tutoring all the time, even on my Friday nights, and taking as many AP and honor classes as I could. And by the time I graduated, my GPA was a 4.83. I applied to 9 colleges and a bunch of scholarships. I heard back from my CSUs first. I thought to myself, yes, got into my safeties. And then slowly came the UCs, Santa Cruz, UCLA. I was like, oh, snaps, that's pretty cool. And then UC Berkeley came, and I was like, oh, snaps, that's really cool. And then Stanford came in, and I was speechless. A few weeks later, I got a huge envelope in the mail. It was like this big, yay big. It was from the Gates Millennium Scholarship, a full ride to any college and funding through the grad school of my choice. It also happens to be my dad's birthday that day. I said, "Happy birthday, Dad. We're going to college for free." The decision between UC Berkeley and Stanford was really hard. My mentors and I talked about it a lot, and ultimately, I decided that for a first-generation college student like me, it was important to surround myself with as many students like me as possible. And so I chose UC Berkeley. Go Bears. At first, I struggled tremendously. I signed up for classes in both computer science and electrical engineering. A lot of my peers, they started coding when they're in the 7th grade, but I'd never done that before. I still remember my first assignment. My friends finished it in 30 minutes, and I was still coding and trying to figure it out 6 hours later. There were so many times when I wanted to quit, but every single time, College Track was there to reassure me. On top of academic support, they helped me find my first internship at a tech company in SF. I worked down the street somewhere around here. In 2016, I became the first person in my family to graduate from college. It was an incredible feeling. My parents arranged to have professional photos taken of us. My dad even printed it on canvas and hung it in the living room. It's the first thing people see when they walk into our house. And today, I build websites for company and proudly serve as the alumni strategy consultant for College Track. My parents only work one job now because I could help support the family. My younger sister is in College Track, and I believe she's way smarter than me. A few years ago, I built my own app. It's almost like a Uber, like Uber Eats before its time. I went through an incubator program that taught me how to take an idea and turn it into something tangible. And now, my goal is to develop tech tools to help students from disadvantaged backgrounds learn better. Looks like I'm an inventor after all. I would like to thank my parents. They're in table 13 today. Mom and Dad, I couldn't have done any of this without your sacrifice and support. Sorry. And thanks to all of you. Thank you for believing in me and kids like me. But I hope in the future that my story isn't one of beating the odds. It should be the norm. Every student deserves the opportunity that I had. Thank you.
A friend over in the corner said, "You're not going to want to have to follow Chang." It's an honor. Chang, thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers. Congratulations to Legal Aid of Sonoma, Compass, Compass Family Services, and College Track. 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting at the San Francisco Chronicle. I had been asked by our friend Audrey Cooper to join the nominating committee for their Visionary of the Year award. Mayor Libby Schaaf, also part of the committee, arrived soon after I did. She walked right past the other people in the room. She walked right up to me. She got up close and she was upset. She said, "Daniel, last night in Oakland, a homeless woman gave birth to a baby in a car. The baby wasn't breathing and a police officer had to resuscitate. Daniel," she said, "what are you going to do about this?" Kind of like I am right now, it took a minute to get my bearings. We both knew there was nothing I could offer in that moment. There was nothing I could change about the reality that had unfolded the night before. But she was distraught, understandably. Eventually, we got down to business, reviewing profiles of leaders in public service, the environment, and the arts. And it was inspiring, but what stuck with me was Mayor Shav's question that day. What is Tipping Point going to do about it? I've been thinking a lot about that encounter. What happened to the mother? What happened to the baby? How did they get to the hospital? And what happened when they did? As leaders, and that includes every one of you in this room, we have a very difficult job of holding firmly to two truths. The first, we know that what we are doing is making a huge difference. That is what this morning is all about. Together, our grantees put 20,000 people on a path out of poverty last year alone. And truth two, we know that what we're doing is not nearly enough. And if you walk down the streets, sometimes you can think to yourself, what we're doing isn't working at all. It makes us all crazy. I know it makes our staff and our leadership council and our board crazy. So we look for answers and we make excuses. We say government isn't working, tech is too greedy, people lack motivation. So we retreat. We leave the leadership, the real work, the fight to others. As the CEO of Tipping Point, I know that each year our 42 groups are impacting the lives of thousands of people like Chang and Heather and Travis and Sean. You all were amazing this morning. But the speakers, the four of you, have done something more this morning than just illustrating the impact of Tipping Point's grantees. You four and your leaders use the most potent tool any person has, their voice, to educate us, to inspire us, and to move us to action. So today I'm asking all of you to follow their lead in the fight against poverty by using your voice. And believe me, I know this is much easier said than done. I have my issues with this at times. I don't speak up. Sometimes I think it's not the humble thing to do to speak up, and we've always prided ourselves on humility at Tipping Point. Our grantees are the experts, and at times this can lead me to defer, and it can lead us to defer, and let others take the hits. But the North Bay fires of last October changed all that. People came to us, they came to this community. They wanted to help but didn't know how. They saw Tipping Point as a platform, a way to channel generosity. And it seems like a no-brainer right now. But at the time, there was disagreement about whether or not we should jump in. There were some that said, what are we getting mixed up in? We don't do emergency relief fund work. What are we jumping into? And to be honest, we were way outside our comfort zone. But I learned that when we stand up to support people who are struggling, I've never looked back and said it was a mistake. After my conversation with Mayor Shav, I wondered about something else. I wondered, why did she come up to me? There were other people in that room. The truth is, I know the answer. Mayor Shav has seen what Tipping Point can do. She saw what we did out after the fires. She knows about the work of our grantees in her city, and she knows about our tireless efforts to reduce chronic homelessness here in San Francisco. And she knows that we can convene a room like this. I heard from her earlier this week. I sent her a text. I said, "How's that baby doing?" She said she's doing well. She survived. There was an excellent doctor. There was a police officer willing to go the extra mile. No one deferred that night. Humanity worked overtime. I want to thank you for being here. You know, sometimes you guys ask, why am I walking out there? Because I try to do my crying back there while everybody's talking. So I want to thank you for being here. I have in here that I want to hope that you will give, but I need you, and we need you to give this morning. Maybe I'll give you to this afternoon, maybe next week, but sometime this holiday season, we want you to think about Tipping Point. You all are our strongest supporters, and we need it more than ever. And I want to thank you for sharing your common belief with all of us, a relentless optimism that when we come together, it's possible to change reality, not just for one individual or one family, but for all of those living in poverty throughout our region. So thank you for being here this morning, and happy holidays.